Are gathering in Paris today to mark the second anniversary of the signing of the Paris Climate Agreement. But what is the agreement all about? Well, in December 2015, 196 countries reached a consensus in a deal that unites all the world's nations in a single agreement on tackling climate change. That ministers from 196 countries reached a consensus on a set of targets was hailed as historic in itself. The key elements of the agreement are to keep the rise in global temperatures well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial times and endeavour to limit them even more to 1.5 degrees centigrade. To limit the amount of greenhouse gases emitted by human activity to the same levels that trees, soil and oceans can absorb naturally, beginning at some point between 2050 and 2100. To review each country's contribution to cutting emissions every 5 years so they scale up to the challenge. For rich countries to help poorer nations by providing climate finance to adapt to climate change and switch to renewable energy. But during the 2016 United States presidential campaign, then-candidate Donald Trump promised to withdraw the US, which contributes about 15% of the global emissions from carbon, from the agreement, saying the move would help the country's oil and coal industries. In June, President Trump confirmed that the US would withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord during a speech in the Rose Garden at the White House. He said that he was doing so to protect American jobs and the economy in the US. Well, today, French President Emmanuel Macron hosts a meeting in Paris of around 50 world leaders, from Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto to Prime Minister Theresa May, for the One Planet Summit. President Trump was reportedly not invited. Actor and former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, downplayed the US withdrawal from the climate accord yesterday, saying the rest of America would pick up the slack.
It doesn't matter that Donald Trump backed out of the Paris Agreement, because the private sector didn't drop out, the public sector didn't drop out, universities didn't drop out, scientists didn't drop out, engineers didn't drop out, no one dropped out. Donald Trump pulled Donald Trump out of the Paris Agreement, so don't worry about any of that. We, on a subnational level, we're going to pick up the slack and we're going to continue on.
Arnold Schwarzenegger there. Well, we're joined now from the Paris climate change talks by the Climate Change Minister, Claire Perry. Welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us there from Paris. I don't know if you could hear Arnold Schwarzenegger just saying it doesn't matter that Donald Trump's not there because the private sector's going to pick up the tab and the slack. But is his absence overshadowing the conference, bearing in mind he is the world's second most polluting country represented at the table?
Well, it's a good question. The answer is not at all. And actually, what has happened both in the Conference of the Parties, where we spoke from Bonn a couple of weeks ago, and here today, is if anything, the Trump sort of headline withdrawal has reinvigorated other countries and big businesses and the big NGOs and the states and the cities to say, yeah, well, we get that. We don't, we think it's very disappointing, but all it does is mean we're going to go faster and do more. And the Prime Minister's coming out today, as you know. She's going to be making an announcement about the Powering Past Coal Alliance that I set up with Canada only 5 weeks ago. We hope we'd get 50 members by next year. We're over 50 already. She's going to be focusing on the first global electric vehicle summit we want to have in the UK. So I think in a way it's really sad and it's a shame, but Arnie is right. The rest of the country, the people who are actually creating the emissions, are getting on with the job of cutting them, because everyone sees it's good business. Not only is it good for the planet, but cutting our emissions is really good for the economy. We've got almost 500,000 people in Britain working in this low carbon sector. So it's about jobs and growth, which is obviously something that the President of the US cares about.
Right.
So I hope he can come back to the party, but even without him, we will get on and do the job.
All right, but is it all about the money, Claire Perry? Because in the end, if it's about richer countries helping poorer polluting countries to adjust their economies, to move to renewables, the World Bank president said it will take between $3 and $5 trillion a year for 30 years to contain the rise in global temperatures. Should Britain be committing more funds?
Well, we are one of the largest donors of climate finance, Joe. But of course, what's exciting is if you look at what's happening with the cost of renewable technology, it's now being delivered subsidy-free. So I opened Britain's first subsidy-free solar farm just a few weeks ago. Our latest auction bought offshore wind at a price unimaginably low only a couple of years ago, now competitive with fossil fuels. So the world is moving very rapidly to a place where renewables are not a cost trade-off. They're actually lower cost in many cases, a and better for the environment. But we have got to work together. And one of the things I've been saying, and the Prime Minister, what I think will say, is, you know, we can't solve this problem alone. There's huge benefits in collaborating in technology and working together, and we need to make sure that that is accelerated. And, you know, President Macron had a big dinner last night where he kicked off the summit, and he made this amazing point. He said, I don't want to say to my children in 50 years' time, when we've lost Fiji and the Marshall Islands because of sea level rises, we knew it was going to happen and we didn't act. And I think there's a real sense of kind of commitment and optimism here, and a lot of hard work to do. But remember, Britain is leading the pack. We've cut our emissions more and grown our economy more than any other G7 nation. So we know how to do it at home.
Right.
We've still got more to do, and we absolutely want to be there helping the world with this challenge.
But how committed is the British government? Because, you know, the commitment to climate change was questioned when Theresa May abolished the Department for Energy and Climate Change shortly after taking office last year. So it's been sort of demoted.
Not at all. No, I have to disagree, Joe. So we're one of the first countries in the world that has a binding Climate Change Act. Next year is the 10th anniversary. And if you want politicians to do the right thing over a consistent period of time, having that piece of legislation is really, really good. And other countries want to do the same thing. And actually, by putting DEC, as it was called, the Department for Energy and Climate Change, into the business department, we've done something which is incredibly important, which is to say, as we want our economy to grow and prosper, we know that this clean growth thing has to be at the heart of it. So, you know, we're working far more closely with British businesses, with the British financial sector, to say, how do we really make this change happen? So I don't think it's a demotion. I think it's a promotion for the area. And again, look around us. People are coming up to us saying, Britain has really led the world in this space. Well, cut your emissions fast. You're employing hundreds of thousands of people. Let's do it together. And you know, we should actually be proud, Joe, of what we've done. And
well,
celebrate
let's have
that.
a look at some of the domestic policies that the government's undertaken, because the Chancellor's announced in the budget that fuel duty would be frozen again, keeping the tax the same for the longest period in 40 years. Why was the planned rise scrapped? I mean, doesn't that sort of indicate and undermine Philip Hammond's other announcements on a plastic tax and clean air commitments?
Well, and it's great that you spotted those, because it's not just about air, it's about sea quality and water quality as well. But no, because actually what he also did was he put in a new tax level for the most polluting vehicles, the diesel engines, many of which people were encouraged to buy by previous governments. And he also committed several $100 million for building out the world's best electric vehicle charging network. So look, Joe, to me, you have to do this in a structured way. You have to invest in technologies that cut emissions. You have to make sure you're not putting costs up for consumers, and you have to create technology that we can export around the world. So I think it was actually a very measured budget, and you can see Britain now is making 1 in 5 of the electric vehicles that are being sold in Europe. We've got a really fast take-up of electric vehicles, and as I said, the PM will be announcing this global EV summit, because we want to be both driving them and making them in the UK.
But Claire Perry, it is about action, isn't it? It's not just about the rhetoric, and you have pointed to some of the announcements that have been made.
Absolutely.
But the High Court has found that the government's previous attempts to cut air pollution, for example, were so poor as to be illegal. You know, the government has said it won't introduce more clean air zones to charge the most polluting vehicles to enter the UK's most polluted cities. Why not?
Well, I think actually if you read what the budget said, it said this new diesel levy will go directly into clean air funding. And it is about action, Joe. So, look, we will be not burning any coal to produce power by 2025. Our proportion of energy coming from renewables is about 25%. We are actually delivering on our promises, and we've got lots more to do. And it has to be done in a way that doesn't put up costs. But as I said, the new technology that we're bringing on is now effectively the same cost as some of the fossil fuel technologies. But there is always more to do, and that's why I think getting out there, and it's great that you're covering this. This is, I think, probably one of the first live broadcasts done from a climate change summit.
Oh, hooray!
We have to get out there and say to people, this is not this isn't some win-lose trade-off where we have to knuckle down for the sacrificial future. We can save the planet, and we can boost British businesses at the same time, and also work with, as you say, hundreds of other countries who are here, many of them represented by heads of state today, who want to work collectively. So it's a big moment. It's challenging. I'm not suggesting it's all going to be easy, but it's great to see Britain's leadership here today.
All right. Well, enjoy the summit and the conference. Richard Madeley,
Thank you. Sun shining.
do you feel that there is ongoing commitment, enough ongoing commitment by this government to actually meet some of the challenges? I mean, despite what Claire Perry says about meeting some of the targets on cutting emissions, future targets, and I'm talking quite a long way into the future, don't look to be online.
No, this isn't my specialist subject by any means, but the impression that I have actually is quite positive. I thought Claire gave a very good performance there, actually. I thought she explained quite genuinely the commitment that's coming from the government. And
despite the fact they don't have a cabinet minister anymore.
Yes, absolutely, but I thought she dealt with that quite well. I thought her defence of that was quite strong. No, I'm quite comfortable with Britain's stance on global warming. I think that we're ahead of the pack in many ways. I think she's right, and I think that other countries do look up to us to set an example. I mean, as things stand, we're ahead of America, which isn't a bad place to be after what Trump said. So no, I'm not pessimistic actually about our approach to it. I think it's patchy, obviously, but I think on the whole our heart's in the right place, and I think our intentions are good.
Let's leave it there. Now, the